So today we're gonna do a deep dive into the BIT program.
Let's
We want to make sure we all understand exactly what's involved in these inspections, why they're so important for anybody who's operating commercial trucks in California,
Yeah.
and then also how it all ties into the federal DOT requirements.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got some good sources for this.
Yeah.
We've been looking at the One Way Bit website, and we've also got a really detailed CHP presentation on the BIT program.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to try to cut through all the jargon and just give everybody a clear understanding of what BIT inspections are, what's required, why it matters for safety and compliance,
Right.
and at the end of the day, how to make sure that we're all keeping the roads safe out there.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So the BIT inspection, or the basic inspection of terminals, is this basically California's way of making sure that, all the commercial vehicles are safe? Is that right?
Yeah, so the federal DOT kind of sets the minimum for commercial vehicle safety across the whole country.
Right.
But then California's BIT program is they take it a step further.
Okay.
And they monitor more frequently the vehicles that are operating within the state.
Okay.
So that's specifically vehicles that are over 10,000 pounds.
Okay.
So they're really making sure that they're running safely on California roads.
Okay, and so one of the things that kind of stood out to me is that unlike the DOT inspections that happen annually,
Right.
these BIT inspections happen every 90 days.
That's right.
That seems like a lot. Why is that?
Well,
Yeah.
it is a big difference, but it just shows how California is really proactive about safety.
Okay.
The idea is that if they check every 90 days, they're going to catch problems a lot earlier
Okay.
than if they just wait a whole year like the feds do.
Right.
So it's kind of like, going to the doctor for a checkup.
Right.
It's much easier to take care of something small than it is to wait until it becomes a big problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what are the main things that they're looking at during these BIT inspections? What are the big areas?
Yeah, so they're really focused on those critical safety systems.
Okay.
So we're talking about steering systems, of course, because you got to be able to control that big rig.
Yeah.
Brakes are super important.
Right.
And then they also look at the wheels and tires,
Mm.
making sure they're in good condition, so they've got good contact with the road.
Right.
And then they'll also look at things like mirrors,
Oh, okay.
make sure the driver can see properly, and even things like windshield wipers,
Oh, wow.
because, California, we can get some rain sometimes.
Right.
It's important to be able to see clearly.
Yeah. So all really important things.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the CA number? I remember reading about that, the California Carrier Identification Number. How does that tie into the BIT program?
Yeah. So if you're operating a commercial truck in California, you absolutely have to have a CA number.
Okay.
And that's issued by the California Highway Patrol.
Okay.
And here's the important part. Once they give you that CA number, guess what? You're automatically enrolled in the BIT program.
Oh, wow. So it's not an extra step?
Nope. It's just part of doing business in California.
Wow. Oh,
So the CHP, they run the BIT program.
right.
They're going to come out and do a terminal audit.
Okay.
Usually a couple times a year. It takes about an hour.
Okay, so they show up, do the audit, and then how do they decide whether a carrier is meeting the requirements or not? How does the rating work?
Yeah, so they give you a safety compliance rating. So if you get satisfactory across the board, then you're good to go.
Okay.
You're meeting all the safety standards.
Awesome.
But if they find some things that aren't right, you might get an unsatisfactory rating.
Okay, so if you get an unsatisfactory rating, does that mean you have to shut down right away, or how does that work?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If it's not a super dangerous situation,
Right.
they'll tell you what needs to be fixed.
Okay.
And usually they give you 120 days to make the repairs,
Okay.
and then you have to show them proof that you've done it.
Okay. And so what happens if you don't fix those problems in those 120 days?
Well, that's when things can get kind of serious.
Oh, okay.
You could end up with some fines,
Oh, no.
or they might start inspecting you more often.
Oh, wow.
And the worst case scenario, they could even put your vehicles out of service.
Okay, so that means they can't operate.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so definitely want to avoid that.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit more about the difference between the BIT inspections and the DOT inspections. We know BIT is every 3 months. DOT is once a year. Are there other big differences or things that they overlap on?
Yeah, so the main difference is that the BIT program is just for California.
Okay.
DOT is federal.
Right.
And it's interesting, some other states actually have their own state-specific inspections too,
Oh, wow.
in addition to the federal ones.
Okay.
So it just depends on where you're operating.
Gotcha. Okay, so in terms of what they're actually checking on the vehicle itself, the brakes, the lights, the tires, Are those pretty consistent between BIT and DOT, or?
Yeah, they're pretty much the same.
Okay.
They're all about those core safety components, your brakes, lighting tires, steering mechanisms.
Yeah.
All that basic stuff has to be in good working order.
Right. And it's not just about the physical truck, right? They also look at like your records and stuff.
That's right.
Oh.
So just like with the DOT audit, when they do a BIT inspection, they're going to check your driver's license.
Yeah.
Their training records their hours of service logs.
Right.
And they're also going to look at your vehicle maintenance and repair records.
So they want to make sure you're keeping up with all that stuff.
Exactly.
Good.
It's not just about keeping the truck in good shape.
Right.
It's also about following all the rules about your drivers and their qualifications.
Okay. So if a company is like only operating in California, do they have to do both a BIT inspection and a DOT inspection? Because it seems like it might be kind of repetitive.
Yeah, so if you're only in California and you pass your BIT inspection, that usually covers you for the DOT requirements too,
Okay.
at least within the state.
Okay.
But if you're going to cross state lines,
Yeah.
then you definitely still want to get that annual DOT inspection.
Gotcha. Okay. So it seems like qualified technicians are really important in all of this, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
with these BIT inspections, it kind of forces you to like stay on top of your preventative maintenance.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that you got to keep up with those regular checks.
Right.
It's not just about passing the inspection.
Right.
It's about preventing those breakdowns that can cost you a lot of money.
For sure.
And most importantly, you got to keep your drivers and everyone else on the road safe.
Absolutely. Okay, so what specific things should technicians be like looking out for during their regular maintenance to make sure that they're aligned with what the BIT inspectors are going to be looking at?
Yes, so our sources have a pretty good list.
Okay.
They talk about checking all those important engine components, the suspension steering system,
Okay.
the front-end assembly drivetrain,
Yeah.
obviously the tires, wheels, hubs, axles, all that brakes are super important.
Yeah.
Both the mechanical parts and making sure there are no leaks.
Right.
Then you've got the lights and electrical system. Got to make sure all that's working.
Yeah.
The chassis needs to be in good shape.
Right.
All the connections for trailers have to be solid.
Right.
And, of course, you need to have all the emergency equipment,
Yeah.
like your fire extinguisher and your warning triangles.
So that's a pretty thorough list.
Yeah, they really cover everything.
Wow. And the One Way Bit website was talking about how it's really helpful for the technicians to be working with the drivers on those pre-trip inspections
Right?
the drivers are supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So they can kind of catch those problems early on.
Yeah, because the drivers are out there every day.
Right.
So they're the ones who are going to notice if something's not quite right.
Right.
So if the techs and the drivers can work together and share information,
Yeah.
then they're much more likely to find and fix those problems before they become big issues.
Yeah, for sure. It's like having like an extra set of eyes looking for those problems.
Exactly.
And it seems like if you have technicians who really understand all of these regulations,
Yeah.
it's a huge benefit for the company, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If your techs know the rules inside and out, they can diagnose those problems before they turn into violations.
Right.
And that could save a company a ton of time and money.
Yeah, for sure. And potential headaches.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so are there like specific things that technicians should be looking out for during maintenance? Like any red flags that they should be paying extra attention to?
Yeah. So worn brake pads are really common.
Okay.
And any kind of light that isn't working properly,
Okay.
those are easy to spot.
Yeah.
Also, make sure to check the tire tread, make sure it's not worn down too much,
Okay.
and look for any signs of wear and tear in the steering system, like the steering belt.
Okay.
Those are all little things that can get you in trouble during a BIT inspection.
Gotcha. So it's really important to like keep good records of all this maintenance work, right?
It's crucial.
Okay.
The CHP wants to see documentation for everything that's been done in the last 90 days.
Wow.
That means oil changes, repairs, everything.
Okay.
And don't forget about your driver records.
Yeah.
They need to have valid licenses and CDLs if they're required.
Right. And I imagine it's helpful to have all that stuff in like an electronic system.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That way it's organized and easy to find.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about how BIT and DOT are similar in terms of what they're inspecting on the vehicle.
Right.
But the one-way bit information mentioned that DOT regulations are usually a little bit broader.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about like what else is included in DOT compliance?
Yeah, so BIT is mostly about the physical condition of the truck
Yeah.
and some driver records.
Right.
But DOT compliance covers a lot more.
Okay.
They have really strict rules about driver qualifications.
Okay.
So like making sure drivers have the right medical certificates, training, and licenses.
Right.
They also have rules about hours of service
Yeah.
to make sure drivers aren't on the road for too long,
Right.
which can be dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
And they require drug and alcohol screening for anyone in a safety-sensitive position.
Okay.
And if you're hauling hazardous materials,
Right.
then there's a whole other set of regulations you have to follow.
Right. So it's not just about the truck itself. It's about the people and how the whole operation is run.
Exactly. DOT compliance looks at the big picture.
Gotcha. Okay. So even though DOT is broader, it seems like technicians can still play a big role in helping companies stay compliant.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They're like the first line of defense in catching those potential problems.
Okay.
Like maybe they see a weld that's not done right or a bracket on a trailer that's broken.
Right.
Those are things that could get flagged during a DOT audit.
Gotcha. So it's not just fixing the immediate problem. It's
Yeah.
also about like looking out for those bigger issues
Yeah, exactly.
that could cause problems down the line.
They're like the eyes and ears of the operation.
Okay.
They see a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned this idea of a culture of compliance.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
why is it important for trucking companies to like build that kind of environment?
Well, it's about more than just avoiding fines.
Okay.
It's about creating a workplace
Yeah.
where everyone understands the importance of safety and compliance.
Okay.
When your technicians are well trained and they know the rules,
Yeah.
they're going to do a better job. And they're also going to be more likely to speak up if they see something that's not right.
Right. So it's about giving everyone the knowledge and the power to do the right thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are some things that like managers and owners can do to like build this kind of compliance-focused culture?
So first off, you got to be really clear about everyone's responsibilities.
Okay.
Make sure everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And post those safety notices everywhere.
Okay.
So people are constantly reminded.
Yeah.
Regular safety meetings are huge.
Okay.
That's where you can talk about what's going well,
Right.
what needs improvement,
Mhm.
any incidents that have happened,
Right.
and answer people's questions.
Yeah.
And then you really need a good compliance manual
Okay.
that spells out all the rules and regulations.
Gotcha. And so what are the big goals of having this strong culture of compliance?
It all comes down to safety.
Right.
We want to keep the drivers safe,
Yeah.
keep the public safe,
Yeah, for sure.
and of course we want to avoid those fines and penalties.
Right.
It also just makes for a better workplace
Okay.
when everyone's on the same page and working together.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the BIT program specifically.
Okay.
I know from the CHP presentation that it officially started on January 1st, 2016.
Yeah.
So what was like the big change that happened when they implemented the BIT program?
So the biggest change was that they moved away from a time-based system for choosing which terminals to inspect,
Okay.
and they switched to a performance-based system.
Okay, so it's not just about like how long it's been since your last inspection.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now they look at your safety record
Okay.
to decide whether you're high risk or not.
Gotcha. So they're using data to like figure out who to
Yep.
focus on.
Exactly. They're using these scoring systems
Okay.
that are based on the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's Safety Measurement System, or SMS.
Okay.
And specifically, they look at the behavior analysis and safety improvement category,
Okay.
or basic
Okay.
percentiles, to calculate a California Performance Safety Score.
Or CPS.
CPSS. Okay, I'm trying to keep all these acronyms
Oh,
straight.
yeah, right? There's a lot of them.
But so basically, if a company has like higher scores in those federal safety categories,
Yeah.
like if they have a lot of unsafe driving or problems with their vehicle maintenance,
Yeah,
they're more likely to get inspected.
that's right.
Okay.
So if any of your basic percentiles meet or exceed the federal intervention level
Okay.
in any of those categories except for the crash indicator,
Okay.
then all of your California terminals are going to get inspected.
Wow. Okay.
And if your crash indicator basic is 90 or higher, they're also going to inspect all your terminals.
Okay. So those are some numbers that companies need to pay attention to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So the presentation also listed like those specific federal intervention levels
Right.
for each of those basic categories,
Yeah.
both for general freight and for hazardous materials.
Yeah. So like for unsafe driving,
Okay.
the intervention level is 65 for general freight,
Okay.
but it's 60 for hazmat.
Okay. So it's lower for hazmat, right? Because it's more dangerous.
Makes sense. Okay.
And hours of service is the same, 65 for general freight, 60 for hazmat.
Okay. And then what about the others?
So driver fitness controlled substances and alcohol and vehicle maintenance.
Okay.
Those are all 80 for general freight and 75 for hazmat.
Okay.
Then the hazmat compliance basic is 80 for both.
Okay.
and crash indicator is 90 for everybody.
Okay, so they're all a little bit different, but important to keep track of.
Yeah, for sure.
So the presentation also mentioned a second way that they might choose you for an inspection based on the crash indicator basic.
Oh, yeah, that's if your score is below 90,
Okay.
but it's still kind of high.
Okay.
Now, if it's between the intervention level and 89,
Right.
they're still going to inspect you if you hit 90% of the intervention level
What?
for any of these other basics.
Yeah.
Unsafe driving, driver fitness hours of service, or controlled substances and alcohol.
Wow. Okay, so even if you haven't had a lot of crashes, if you have problems in those other areas,
Yeah,
they might still come and inspect you.
they're looking for any signs of trouble.
Okay, that's good to know. So what about the records that they actually look at during a BIT inspection? What kind of stuff are they checking?
Yeah, they look at a lot of stuff.
Okay.
So driver qualification files,
Okay.
things like employer poll notice records, timekeeping logs,
Okay.
records of driver proficiency employment applications.
Wow.
If you're hauling hazmat, they'll check your training records,
Okay.
cargo tank inspection reports,
Hmm.
shipping papers, security plan,
Okay.
and of course all those maintenance records we talked about.
Yeah.
Daily vehicle inspection reports, preventative maintenance schedules,
Yeah.
documentation for any inspections, maintenance lubrication repairs,
Gotcha.
even if you did the work yourself.
Wow. So they're really thorough.
Oh yeah, they want to see everything.
And so I know that they publish the results of these inspections online.
That's right.
Like anyone can go and look up a company's safety rating.
Yeah, it's all on the CHP website.
Okay. So
No.
that's good for transparency, I guess.
Exactly. It helps keep everyone accountable.
Okay. And the presentation mentioned that companies that are hauling hazmat, they have like a special scoring system.
Yeah, that's because hazmat's more dangerous.
Right.
So they have
Yeah.
to be extra careful.
Okay.
They look at all the safety data they can get their hands on, not just BIT inspections.
Wow. Okay. So it seems like there are a lot of different types of vehicles that fall under this BIT program.
Yeah, it covers a pretty wide range.
Okay. So the presentation talked about California Vehicle Code sections 3450112 and 34500.
Right.
And it seems like the program got a little bit bigger in 2016.
Yeah, they expanded it to include more vehicles.
Okay. So before 2016, what kind of vehicles were covered?
So it was mostly 3-axle trucks
Mhm.
over 10,000 pounds,
Okay.
tractors, trailers, and semi-trailers,
Okay.
certain types of dollies that are used with those vehicles,
Okay.
combinations of trucks and trailers that are longer than 40 feet,
Okay.
and anything hauling hazmat that needs placards or a special license.
Okay. And so what got added in 2016?
So starting in 2016, they added any other truck that's regulated by the DMV,
Right.
PUC DCA, or the US DOT.
Right.
So basically, any commercial motor vehicle over 26,000 pounds,
Okay.
or any CMV that's towing a trailer over 10,000 pounds.
Gotcha. So they basically expanded it to include like pretty much any commercial truck.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a few exceptions, like for certain types of trailers,
Okay.
like camp trailers or utility trailers that people use for personal stuff.
Right. So it's really focused on like the commercial vehicles.
Exactly.
Okay. And then the presentation mentioned Title 13 of the California Code of Regulations, Section 1200.
Yeah.
And that kind of spells out like which rules apply to which vehicles.
Exactly.
Okay. And it sounded like there are some like special cases and exemptions and stuff.
Yeah, it can get kind of complicated.
Right.
It depends on the weight of the vehicle, the type of operation,
Right.
whether you're hauling hazmat or not.
Okay. And they updated those rules in 2020.
Yeah.
So it's important to stay up to date.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just to recap, the inspection ratings are satisfactory, unsatisfactory. And they also mentioned conditional.
Yeah, that's usually for re-inspections.
Okay, so like if you fixed some of the problems but not all of them.
Exactly.
Okay. And the CHP made it really clear that their inspectors, they don't actually give you tickets during the inspection.
That's right.
Okay.
They're not there to punish you.
Okay.
They're there to make sure you're safe.
Okay.
So they'll give you a rating.
Right. Yeah.
And if it's unsatisfactory, you got to fix those problems.
Right.
Or you could face consequences later.
Gotcha. So it's more about like education and making sure that things are corrected.
Exactly.
Okay. And I remember them mentioning that you need a US DOT number before you can get a CA number.
Yeah. That just shows how the state and federal systems are connected.
Right. And then you can choose to display either your US DOT number or your CA number.
Yeah, you don't need both.
Yeah, okay.
Whichever one's easier for you.
I think this has been a really helpful deep dive into the BIT program.
Yeah, I think so too.
It really makes you think about how important it is to be proactive about all of this stuff.
For sure.
Staying on top of those 90-day inspections, keeping really good records,
Yeah.
managing your safety performance data.
Absolutely.
It can make a big difference, not just in terms of avoiding penalties,
Right.
but also in proving how efficient your whole operation is.
Yeah, and protecting your company's reputation.
Right.
Nobody wants to be known as the unsafe company.
Exactly. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about creating a safer transportation network for everyone.
Couldn't agree more.
So, yeah, maybe it's time for all of us to go back and take a look at those CHP and FMCSA resources
Yeah.
and see what else we can learn.
Always good to keep learning.
Absolutely.
Huh.
Okay, well, thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
I hope everybody out there found it helpful,
Yeah, me too.
and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.